Adoption provides a legal means for another family to permanently take on the responsibility of caring for and raising a child. But adoption is much more than a legal process. Sometimes children can't live with their birth parents because they are unable to care for them and provide for their most basic needs. Other times parents, for a variety of reasons, seek a new family to raise and care for their child. Adopting a child is a lifelong commitment, so it's important to learn about every step of Ontario's adoption process. In Canada, provincial law regulates adoption. This means that the rules for adopting a child in Ontario are different than other provinces or territories. There are 5 different ways to adopt in Ontario. Each type of adoption varies greatly in cost and length of time it will take to adopt a child. The 5 main types of adoption are as follows: public, private, international, adoption of a stepchild, and adopting a birth relative, known as a kinship adoption. There is no set length of time to adopt, and it is not a first-come, first-served system. The goal is to match a child with a family that meets the needs of both the child and the adoptive family, and this can take time. We'll spend a few moments describing the differences between the 5 main types of adoption. Public adoptions are adoptions of children in the permanent care of a Children's Aid Society, or CAS for short. These children are also known as Crown wards. Children become available for a public adoption because their birth parents decided to make an adoption plan, or an Ontario court decided that the child must be permanently removed from their birth parents. There is no cost to adoptive parents to go through the public adoption process with the Children's Aid Society. To start the process, simply contact your local Children's Aid Society. There is no set waiting period, so once you have been approved to adopt, it is likely to take between 6 months to 2 years or longer for you to be matched with a child. Keep in mind that most children in the care of CAS who are Crown wards are beyond the age of infancy. They are often older children and may have siblings who are also in CAS care. The next type of adoption is private adoptions. Most children placed through private adoptions are newborns. These adoptions are handled by a private agency or individual licensed by the government. A private agency or individual will charge you a fee for their services that is likely to be between $15,000 and $25,000. There are also additional fees for homestudy assessment and parent training program. To start the process, contact a licensed private agency and then a private adoption practitioner to conduct a home study to assess your skills and readiness to raise an adopted child. Private adoption practitioners also supervise all private adoption placements. There is no set waiting period. After a home study has been completed, the timeframes will be affected by the birth parents' views about the family they would like to parent their child. Keep in mind that there are relatively few infants available for adoption compared to the number of families seeking to adopt infants. The next type of adoption are international adoptions. Children from international adoptions can be infants, toddlers, or school age, and can be sibling groups. Most of these children have spent time in an orphanage. Agencies usually charge $20,000 to $50,000 for their services. There are also additional fees for a home study assessment and parent training program. To start the process, contact a private agency licensed by the government to arrange international adoptions, and then a private adoption practitioner. Waiting times vary for international adoptions according to the country you are adopting from. Approved applicants must consult with their agency regarding current timelines. Keep in mind that you will need to travel to meet the child you are adopting in their home country, and you may need to meet them more than once. Most international adoptions are finalised in the child's country of origin. The child must remain in their country until the Canadian immigration process is complete. The last 2 types of adoptions, which are adoptions of a stepchild and kinship adoptions, require an application to an Ontario court. To adopt a stepchild or a relative like a nephew or grandchild living in Ontario, it's best to retain the services of an Ontario family lawyer. An assessment by an adoption practitioner is not needed for this type of adoption, unless the judge requires it. To adopt a relative from outside Canada, you are required to complete the following. 1. Apply through an Ontario agency licensed to facilitate adoptions in the child's home country. 2. Contact an adoption practitioner to conduct a structured analysis family evaluation, or SAFE for short. A SAFE is a home study assessment. An adoption practitioner can also provide information regarding adoption preparation training, known as Parenting Resources for Information Development and Education, or PRIDE for short. 3. Be approved as a suitable adoptive parent by the Ministry of Children and Youth Services before making an adoption application to the child's home country. And 4. Submit an application to Canadian Immigration to get permission for your adopted child to move to Canada. Now that you know a little bit about the 5 main types of adoption in Ontario, let's talk about the eligibility requirements to become an adoptive parent. To become an adoptive parent, you must be over 18 years of age and be a resident of Ontario. Adoptive parents come from many different backgrounds, regardless of their religion, ethnicity, sexual orientation, or whether they are an individual or a couple. Having the desire and being capable of providing a safe, loving home for a child is one of the most important criteria for becoming an adoptive parent. If you are interested in becoming an adoptive parent for any type of adoption, you are required to do the following. Complete a structured analysis family evaluation home study conducted by an adoption practitioner to assess your skills and readiness to raise an adopted child. Adoption practitioners are approved by Ontario's Ministry of Children, Community and Social Services. The home study process includes assessing your home environment and discussions about being a parent and the specialised aspects of parenting an adopted child. The home study will help decide whether you are ready to be an adoptive parent and what type of child you are best suited to adopt. You must also complete a 27-hour training program called Parent Resources for Information Development and Education, PRIDE. PRIDE helps to prepare you for the responsibilities involved in raising adopted children. It's also important to be aware of some of the myths about adoption. We'll talk about 6 myths in this video. Myth number 1. You have to be wealthy to adopt in Ontario. In reality, you don't actually have to be wealthy. However, you must be able to meet the needs of the child. There is no explicit minimum income requirement to be eligible for adoption. Depending on the situation, some subsidies might be available as well. Myth number 2. Physically and mentally healthy children are not available for adoption. In reality, all types of children are adopted in Ontario. Sometimes children are faced with emotional or medical challenges, and sometimes they are not. Myth number 3. There are no more international adoptions. Although international adoptions may be somewhere more rare than other types of adoptions, and many countries have reduced the number of children who participate in such programs, many hundreds of families still adopt internationally. Myth number 4. Parents who already have children cannot adopt. Whether or not you already have children will not ultimately determine your eligibility. Some children may need all of a parent's attention. However, many children benefit from experienced parents and would benefit from families who have other children. Myth number 5. It takes 7 years or more to adopt a child in Ontario. There is no set time for how long an adoption can take, but it is certainly not true that a minimum requirement of 7 or more years exists. Those wishing to adopt have to obtain a home study. An adoption home study may take several months to complete. Adopting from another country can come with specific timelines as well. In the public and private systems, timing depends on the match between parents and children. In some circumstances, adoptions are processed as quickly as within 1 year. Myth number 6. The race of the child is the single most important factor in the adoption. Although race, culture, and ethnicity are some of the factors that are considered, they are not the only factors when trying to determine the best match for a child. It is true, however, that if all other factors are equal, then culture would be the overriding factor. Some children's aid societies also engage in specific outreach to gay and lesbian families as well. Please note that this video is intended for general illustrative purposes only. This video is not intended as legal advice, and we strongly recommend consulting a qualified family lawyer before making any decisions about adoption in Ontario. If you found this video helpful, please take a moment to subscribe to our channel and leave a comment with a topic that you'd like us to make a video about. You can always support our efforts to make free legal information available to Canadians by supporting KPA Lawyers on Patreon.